or whatever you think you can't do, just know that there is someone who is confidently doing it wrong right now. They have no plans at doing it better, and people are paying them to do it. Please believe in your own excellence as much as they believe in their mediocrity. And that one really, yeah, kind of mic drop. And, and I think the interesting thing about that, and I will tell you specifically what happened with me, and I have this still on my desktop because I feel like I need to read this a lot, because I think this goes back to the idea of like artists getting in their own way, creatives getting in their own way, people just getting in their own way, is we kind of determine what we are qualified to do and not a lot.
Jump, you're ready now. Jump, the sky's the limit. Jump, jump, jump. Leave it all behind and jump. Just go for it. Jump, if you can dream it. Jump, jump, jump. Together we can do all things.
All right. Welcome to Jump. Today I have my sweet friend, Nicole here. Let me get your Nicole Tamarin.
You got it. Yeah.
Finally, Nicole Tamarin, one of like the best hosts at the Clubhouse, the licensed artists. I love your room. I got connected with you through Cherry there. Not only that, you are a phenomenal artist and a boss lady that gets the job done. With that being said, Nicole, welcome to Jump.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to do this with you.
Okay, so let's take us back. When did you know that you love creating art, that you love to make art? How did this thing came about?
I don't know if I like knew that I loved it. I just did it. So, we grew up, some people find this a little funny, like we didn't have a television. So we were constantly entertaining ourselves, right? And so you kind of like make things. We were doing stuff in the backyard, making camps. We schedule plays, and I'd make all costumes for it. And because I was like that and my brother was like that, I just kind of thought people were like that. And I'm sure even when I was thinking back, it's were the neighbors like that? Or did we just impose these things on them, right? And, one thing about it though is I was always the background stuff. Like I said, if we made a tropical band, I may have had all the instruments and the costumes, but would we actually play anything? No, because I really didn't do that part of it. So it was always about the creative packaging, even then. But yeah, I think it's just something that just sort of is part of us. A lot of creatives will probably say that. It's, it comes out in different ways at all points in your life. But I don't know if I ever knew I loved it. I just did it always, and it's always been a part of me. So it's more that you miss it versus that you love it. So I think that's a weird distinction. I never really thought about, do I love it at the end of the day? Isn't that weird? You just
right.
We do. We love it, but it's
that's amazing. So it's amazing because your art is so genuine, amazing, really lively and incredible gifted. I'm gonna have a moment here where I'm gonna just brag on you. Now, tell us a little bit about I know I didn't send you this question, but I'm going to ask you right now, how many stores in the country that has your hand in it?
I don't know. Honestly, it's one of the very strange parts about what I do is I tend to not know where it's going to end up and when, and could I probably, I mean, it's not that it's hidden from us or anything, but we have this joke amongst sort of my friends that do this, and it's called art licensing bingo, or art licensing Where's Waldo. So basically I don't tend to know where things come. And yes, I taking it back to a contract. It's in there. It's just such a delayed thing that you really don't know. But I do work with companies internationally as well as in the United States. A lot of that is mass market. So how many Hobby Lobby stores are there? Wow. How many Joann's? How many, Lowe's store? I mean, that's so it's really
so we can walk into those big stores and find you.
Possibly. If it's
Nicole, so here's the deal, Nicole. You are in every house you're in everywhere.
Sometimes, yeah. And it's so funny because I talk about that Where's Waldo. I went to a wedding and I stayed with my aunt and I was getting ready and I go past her dresser and I was like, I made that bag. And she didn't even know it was mine. And you kind of look at it and you show you like your name on the bottom. And it's kind of fun. But like, despite that, I really haven't found, like, me personally, and sounds really bad, but I'm not a shopper. Like, I make art for product, but I'm personally not a shopper. So it's a part of my job that's a little different. But so I have not really had that experience of coming into a store, like, once in a while. But, you know, for instance, I have over 600 greeting cards somewhere in the world. Like, they're made. And I've never walked into a store and seen a greeting card that I've designed, right? But I've had friends do that. So they sent me a photo, and it's just interesting because you think, it's not what you think. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I'm in every store everywhere, but it is really very much that Where's Waldo experience. Like, oh, what? Oh, look, I found it. Like, and then, and I'll see other people that I know, you know, if I'm out at TJ Maxx or wherever I am, and then I see it. And like, you know, I think we all do this. Like, we display the shelves, like, we're like getting it all set up for the person. You like clear everyone else's stuff, you get it all pretty, and then you take a photo and you're like, hey, I guess, you know, I saw this person here. And you know, it's just kind of that, again, going to that community thing. Like, we all sort of have this struggle, and I think mostly it's because it is such a part of my flow with my job that, like, I'm focused right now on art that's going to be coming out in 2024. So it's really hard for me to even think about what's at a store now, unless I like bump into it. So that's partly, but yeah, it really can be from anywhere from like a small boutique all the way through like a mass market store, which is kind of interesting.
So everywhere that I go now, I'm going to look for your
You'll have to look. I know I need to be better about, like, oh, when I figure it out, I should post it. And I have been trying a little bit of that, like, oh, this was spotted at TJ Maxx, or this was spotted at Lowe's.
And now, if you talk about that, is the dream of many artists. That's what they dream about. It's like, I just wish I can see, you know. But when you're living this lifestyle, you're just like, oh, well, that's what I do, right?
Right? Yeah. Or I think it loses. Like, one of my weird realizations is it loses a little bit of like the win, right? Like, at what stage is it considered the win? Is it like when you get hired? Because now that I've been through the process so many times, it's a little bit different. Like, if you make something, or I'm going back to even when I was in school, and like you get the assignment, you work really hard on the assignment, and then there was like that day where you go in and everyone hangs their pieces up, and you get this feeling of like accomplishment. And you're like, oh, I made this thing. And then you get to talk to everyone about your thing. And everyone's like, you know, complimenting or like critiquing or whatever it is. But there's like this event around the completion of art.
Right.
And then you kind of start a new process. Well, with art licensing, that win is a little bit off mark, because is it like early on in my career, was the win when I got to meet an art director? That was a win. And I like felt that win. And I was like, okay, great. Well, now, you know, you can't just meet an art director. Now you have to get your piece selected. So then it's like, oh, okay, great. My piece was selected. That's my new win. But then you realize sometimes those pieces get cut and they don't even make it to product. So then the next win is it got produced and we get it out into a store. Well, guess what? Sometimes things don't sell. And so then you realize that your $30 check, that I guess that wasn't the win. So like, when does the win come with licensing is a really like odd question. And one of the things, and I've mentioned it a few times, is that part of the strategy or the type of environment that our license producing is there are not those individual wins. It's a collective experience. So, and I'm a numbers person, like crazy numbers. I love it. My personal finances, you'll get me in there. I'm plugging in my, like every week, like, where am I? Where's my spending? It's categorized. My business, I can't treat that way, because I think emotionally it's too hard of a roller coaster to be on. So I just know it works in a weird way. And one of my goals for 2022 is probably like spend a little bit more time more regularly, like than quarterly, looking at where I'm at, because really, truly, I don't decide if it was like a successful year till the end. And oddly, is it any art I made that year? No. Is it financially what was sold that year? Sometimes not. So it's like, did the income that came out of the year, which is supporting me, how amazing, did that feel like it was worth the year of effort? And I think that that's something that's really, really kind of separate from the way that I actually look at everything else in life. But I've learned that I have to take that approach with it, because it's just, there's 1,000 ways that something that looks like it's very planned can kind of go off the rails. And the last thing you want to do is be like, was it worth me painting that? And I can't go down those roads, because it's a little different than if you go to a show and you sell out. Yeah, it's cool. Like, it was worth the time.
Exactly.
Very different mentality. And I mean, I'm fortunate in some ways. Some people, it's like they come to it later. For me, it was actually how I started making my income from art was through this method. So I don't have much to compare it to, oddly, right? So,
but you know what? That method, like, if there's people like myself, that method would be something amazing for other people to hear about and learn from you, because you are an expert in what you do. Like, you really are.
By default. Because I don't know anything else.
You're so amazing. So I wanted to talk to you about, what is the most difficult step that you had to overcome to do what you do today, to live as an artist, to get paid as an artist, to have your product in I don't know how many stores. What's the things that you had to overcome?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and I think a lot of artists struggle with this, is just like, we kind of got to get over ourselves and share. And that's a really difficult thing for me. And even now, I still struggle with that. And it's amazing how much we get in our own path for that. So I know that, like, on a very practical level, the big thing I had to overcome is, how do you turn art into income? Like, that is a very hairy road, and it's very different for everybody. And I know I had a lot of starts that, like, didn't quite pan out, whether it was because I wasn't good at it, or like it just didn't flow, or my art didn't quite fit, or all these things. Because I know we really do have infinite paths with creativity, which is kind of amazing. But, we get down these different things. And, mine was that I didn't come out of school making art. Like, I went to school for it, but life has different directions for you. And I came out and I was like a mom, and I was a mom that worked in retail. Like, it was very disconnected to being an artist. And, you kind of work your way back to those paths. And for me, that was really kind of the biggest hurdle, is how do you keep art as because, there's some of us that do art in the way that is really our life and our livelihood. Whether that's happening at the moment is definitely the intention. And you kind of just know that going in. Some people stumble down that path and they don't realize it's going to happen in that form. But art does play a larger role for certain people. And when you get outside of a creative environment, or for me, that was like leaving school, and you say, hi, I'm an illustrator, or I'm an artist, and you'll be met with, oh, that's great. So is my aunt and my sister and my friend. And then they show you some like things. And art's an amazing creative outlet, and I think everyone should do it. But my community is people who are really after it in a slightly different way. It's not that we all do art. We all do art. We have that as commonality, but there's a shift when you think about people who plan to do it as income and the role that it takes in our lives. And so it's interesting, because you think, well, pretty immediately, like, well, that's not my community. And
I relate to that. I relate to that, because I have different art communities, but I always identify a lot with the small business owners. All the creatives, because that's what I feel. When I started going into the art license community, I did feel like you guys were in a different place than me, but I was like, no, I'm there in a different way. I'm going there.
Yep.
But
there's a familiarity to it.
Yes. And I was like, but I understand. The difference that I felt is that I was going to, like, I had to get out more, and you guys were doing more work at producing at home, you know what I mean? And I had to produce home and go. So it's a little bit different. But so to be able to overcome that and say, no, I am an artist, I am a professional. Yeah. Did you have to embrace that? Did you have to come to Jesus Day?
Yeah, kind of. I had more of I always was wired that way, oddly, right? Like, I knew I wanted to do art for income when I decided to choose that as a career. Or I guess specifically when I chose to go to school for that, because I didn't take art really until very, very late in high school, because, I did like what we're supposed to do. You take all the classes, like you're an AP, you do like, you know, English and that. And, you know, for me, it was ultimately getting like kind of kicked out of like the one thing I'm really bad at, which is French. Took it for many, many years. I'm very bad at it. And the teacher was like, stop taking French. Like, you are really bad. Like, why don't you go take art? Because I'm, you know, you're doodle. And like, so she sort of sent me down that road that was like, this is not a road for you. Choose something else. And
wow,
it was pretty defining, to be honest with you. And it really sent me off onto this idea that I could do art instead of doing other things that were more practical, to be honest. And I got down that road and, you know, it's the same thing. Like, oh, I could spend my time doing this. And then you get to the end of high school and you could pick that to go to school. Like, that's it. And it's so outside of what the path was that I sort of laid out for myself, because art was so kind of, I don't want to say last minute, because it always existed. It just didn't exist in that framework. And so part of me selecting art school was that I really intended my career to go that direction.
Amazing.
And, you know, like I said, I mean, even though I'm wired that way, I would say like my target was so small and it took me forever to get there. So it was like 10 years from when I went to college to actually coming around, because, you know, life kind of you get sucked up into life and the way that we have to generate income. I don't care if that's a creative way or outside of that. Certain amount of hours go to like generating your life in that way. So like, just like what you're saying, I have to be out and then I have to be home creating. There's a big shift in like how to do both things while you're doing them. And for me, my life was not in the world of creativity because it wasn't, I had left that world 10 years ago. Right. Like, so I had to kind of rebuild that world and rebuild my head space about it. So my first thing was podcasts. It was podcasts, webinars. It was stuff on how to be an entrepreneur, how to be an illustrator, how to be like just an artist. Cause I kind of always, I'm weird about that. Like, am I an artist? I don't know. But like, it was kind of like
I can't believe, I just can't believe you asked that question.
Oh, no, that's a big one. Yeah. I have trouble with that term. Yeah, it's weird. It's why I like being an illustrator. So like, oh, that makes sense. But yeah, artist is a weird term to me. I don't know. It's quite funny. It'll probably be a conversation that we have like at some point on Clubhouse. Who knows? But yeah, I think it was more getting into my brain this new way of thinking. So yeah, I guess it was a little bit of like retraining myself, or at least training myself back to where I thought I was when I was doing that for work or not work, but education. Because that was really what was missing, is I had to like, you know, not talk about retail or not work about like, I was working for an interior designer. So I knew that, but like you needed a new wiring structure. So part of that was really to start listening to people's conversations or information that they were putting out there, which is why it's a weird twist side of things, because that was what really did it. And the more I learned, the more I kind of walked down the steps of the road. And, you know, I did at some point in that process, I didn't know it was even coming, but somebody directed me to something that specifically was about art licensing. And it was because I had reached out to an artist about something that had happened that was like, didn't go well, randomly reached out, right? I didn't have a community, but I reached out to this person and she looked at what I did and was like, your art is perfect for my industry. You should look at this. And so she just like, almost like my French teacher, stop doing this, go do that. And so I did that and I pivoted. And like you were saying about that familiarity piece, is that I didn't know what I was doing. I knew nothing about it, but everything I would read, I was like, oh gosh, that's so me. That's so me. That's so me. And there was this familiarity about it, even though I knew nothing about it. And as I started to put the pieces together, I still know nothing about it, right? It's always changing, but it feels right. And it feels like my fit. So that was the big hurdle, I think, is to not only just, I guess, rewire how I was thinking or rewired my day to day, but it was also understanding where that like art fit to process. And to make that connection was so huge. And, you know, it really was a series of missteps to get me there, but it's definitely the thing that I think was the biggest challenge.
There you go. All right. So we're going to go back. I wanted you to give 3 advices for beginner artists, for people that want to do art as a living. You know, I would say a lot of our listeners, they're in different countries. They are in the United States, but they are creators. So for the people that want to do art for a living, what would be the 3 advisors that you give them?
Sure. So the first one, I'm going to go back to like one of the very first presentations I ever did, which, it's so hard. But I remember the very first slide, it was a name tag and it said, hello, my name is, like, these, you go to an event, hello, my name is. And I had written Nicole and I'm an illustrator. And I think that is the thing that I still go back to as step 1 is make sure that in every conversation, whether you are doing the thing or not, that people know that that is who you are and what you do. And especially for creatives, I think that we are more closely knit to that part of us as part of our personality. So like, I used to do, I'm an optician at another point in my life. And so if I'm like adjusting someone's glasses or dispensing, they somehow would find out that I did art and then I was an illustrator. And it's funny because I can even tell you specific stories that came out of those conversations that helped me kind of do a different thing. But the idea is that we all are laying seeds all the time. And I think that people in genuine, like they really do want to help others. And so in the same way that someone will hear that you're an artist and tell you about their sister that does art or, draws on the side, you may also have someone that says, oh, I know someone that works at this publishing company, or I know this person that needs XYZ. So it needs to be a part of your verbiage that this is what you do and this is who you are. And I really think that, again, going back to that sort of like imposter piece is like we feel uncertain of saying something unless we are already doing it, already validated in doing it. And I think that we just like, again, like we talked about, like creativity just exists. And if you want to do it for a job, you're just needing to match your roads up, right? It's not that it didn't happen. It's like, so whether you are validated by the number that's in the bank account from it, the client that's hiring you, that doesn't matter. Most people just need to know that you do it. So you show up and you say, I'm Nicole, I'm an artist. That's what they will take away. In the same way that as you put your pieces out online, we as the consumer, or we as your audience per se, that's what we start to associate with you. Nice. And that's so wonderful. The same idea is that like associate your title or your intended place with what you say every single day. It should be probably like the second thing out of your mouth. Like that is
that is so good. I know you have 2 more things to say, but that's so good because when I came to the group on Clubhouse that you lead with Cherry, when I came to that group, I had no license deal. I didn't have it, but I knew it. I didn't have a license deal. But I felt like I was living it. I felt like that one day I was going to get it. Some way, somehow it was going to come to me. So then this year, when a company came to me, I was like, now I have something to say. Maybe I can ask a question. Like, I felt so good because I was like, I've been following this conversation for so long to get to see or hear what to expect. Yeah. Then now that I'm working with the company, it's so natural to me. I already know what to expect. Like, I get it. You
Absolutely.
Like, it's not that I'm going to give you an art and the check is coming tomorrow. I get it. It's like planting a seed. The tree has to grow, and then that time it comes for you to bear the fruit. But anyway, but what I'm saying is, when you know this is where I belong, I am artist. Hello, my name is Rebecca.
Yeah.
I think that is such a powerful teaching that you're giving people, because if they know they are called to do this, that thing is going to come to them some way, somehow.
Yep. And that is the really big thing that I had to look back on and know that I had, is that even though I had gone to school for something and I was not pursuing it, I mean, I really wasn't. I was, it was coming out in all these different ways, but it wasn't coming out in the way that I knew. And that's what I mean. That target for me was so intentional and so small, and I still had trouble doing it. But the thing is, I just constantly was gathering information, or like, before I was intentionally doing that, you're out at the store and you'll go through like the children's illustrator's book and you'll take a couple of notes. Every few years I'd send out postcards. Like I always kind of knew and gathered that type of thing. So that's what it's such a mind shift, is that you really need to know where you're heading. Even if that's not clear, you just know you're heading down that path because you collect these little bits and pieces. And, there's it's funny, this is not really a quote I was going to share, but my dad used to send, like, while I was at retail, would drop off these little like snack packs and they'd have a business card. And I have one right here that I kept, but this one says, chance favors the prepared mind. And that is what that is, right? It's chance is just chance. It's something you bump into. But if you're already planting those seeds, gathering the info, well, now you know what to do with it when you bump into it. So it's not like fear. It's like, oh no, I already know how to do this.
That's
like what you said, I'm just going to walk the path now. It wasn't on the table, but I was doing the foundation, and now the table is ready to kind of absorb that and take that in. So that's a really big, I'm so glad. I don't think I knew you from before, right? So we just are more recent. I didn't realize you had kind of been in these conversations.
I've been there for a long time.
Yeah, and that's amazing, because that's me too. I love, like, I was just kind of there, and then you start to put together these like little pieces and parts until you get your light bulb moment, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is where they all fit. And I think that's a lot of like creativity is it's kind of the puzzle. Like you have all your little parts and pieces, and you're just like moving it around until all of a sudden it like drops and it clicks, and you realize like, oh great, I have all of these things. It didn't make much sense, but like once you find their home, it really, really does.
That's really fun. 2 more advisors. I need 2 more.
Well, one actually you kind of touched on, which is to find your people and find your community. And it's really totally something that, like I said, what was I doing? I was training my brain with new thoughts. Well, the next step of that was I was actually meeting people that were doing what I wanted to do. And so even if I wasn't doing it yet, and sometimes that means that you start in like a digital community where you're very passive and you kind of sit back on whether that's a Facebook group or someone's blog that you follow. If they are doing what you want to do and are out there sharing, because I do think that, like, I don't know if that's a creative thing or if that's just a human thing. We have this need to share and teach. And so people are out there telling others, sharing conversations about what's happening around them. And so that's a community. And then you can have a more active community where maybe you're starting to post, and you kind of said this too. You're like, I was just listening for a while and now I have something to talk about. And it even goes more so to the fact that like you have a lot to talk about. Yours just happens to be a little to the left. And I think that's the other larger community that I'm always so fascinated with. But overall, it's like, how do you meet these people? And anything you can do. And I know we're coming off of a year where we've all really been out and separate. And I am that introvert that like would just totally be fine sitting in my house for the next 10 years. It's fine. But like anything you can do to get out of the studio or out of your house or out of your like normal routine to be with other people. Yeah. That's a huge, huge thing. And I remember one of the things that, like, you know, you look back on stuff and you're like, I don't know how I was that brave. I remember seeing a post on somebody's, I don't even know what, was it their Facebook? Was it their, I don't know. I don't know where these things are, but I remember seeing a post for an event that was like, I don't know what the event was for, like a launch of something. And I remember thinking, I have to go there. So here I am, like I'm scared out of my mind, driving God knows where by myself to show up at someone's house that I had never met. And that is not something I would like to do. I don't like to do it now. I don't like to do it then. But it's almost like I just had this sense that I needed to get in a room. Like, what room do you need to be in? You need to be in the room of the ones that like you're trying to get to. And how do you place yourself in that? Good. Yeah. So we have digital ways to do that. We have physical ways to do that. And, you know, leaving the couch, leaving my house and getting myself in a room with conversation with people I had never met. And some of those, and I still remember I walked in the door and I was like, hi, I'm Nicole Tamarin. And this woman, Kathy Weller, who I love, she was like, oh, from Twitter, for probably the 5 minutes I was on Twitter. If you're from Twitter, let me show you where to put your coat. And I'm still friends with Kathy now. And I just think that that one event that I went to exposed me to people in person that I continue to work through in a community in other ways online. So yeah, community is everything to me in terms of it's how I've learned all of it. So this is not stuff we're taught in school, right? So it's the relationships that we make, and it's the like conversations. It changes everything. Because I met Pam Coxwell, which she's a professional artist, and Pam met Sherry in the conference. And then she calls me and she said, you need to go for a coffee with Sherry. So then I go to Boulder
And Sherry takes me to this group with full of artists. Like it's just it grows. It's not like.
And going back to that whole thing, hello, my name is, and I wasn't kidding. I met my art group, my very first art group I met because I was dispensing someone's glasses and it happened to be for an illustrator. Why? Because we really need to see. And she was like, I have a group that I think you would get a lot out of. We're all professional illustrators. Normally that's the requirement, but I think I can talk to them. And so she gave me my first group, and that came from a hello, my name is Nicole and I'm an illustrator conversation. And so those little things, those are those little seeds that you don't realize are life-changing because you took the small risk in like a very like, I mean, really,
that's amazing.
Like a negligible way, right? But
that is
those little pieces. I met this person who introduced me to this, who brought me to see these people, and then it opened up this world. That's everything. So especially with creativity, that's
I agree. I think so far, like if the people are listening to this, like I think this is the golden key to unlock for them is hello, my name is.
And for all of us too. And I think we have to continue to do it, which is
this is
that it doesn't get easier.
This is like better than like this is so juicy. This is so much goodness in it. What you're saying, it's just amazing. Now I have a question. So do we have a last advice or do we already did it?
I guess honestly, my last piece is always that things don't happen in the time frame that you think or want them to be. And we sort of touched on that a little bit, but just from a practical level of like art licensing is obviously we're making art that doesn't actually hit stores and then you don't get paid till like forever ago. But it's not just that. It's like I said, I knew what I wanted to do for school. I had inklings. I wanted to work for companies. We don't always know how all of that's supposed to lay out in our lives. And if it's not happening now, it doesn't mean it's not happening. And I think it goes back to the laying seeds piece is you need like a life is meant to marinate and a life is meant to gel. So there's a lot of things that you're learning and doing in the process that you don't think are connected, but they really truly are. And I say that straight down to like my retail experience, which retail for anyone that's had the joy of that job, it's not fun, but you know what? For an introvert, that was me at my first trade show.
Wow.
Hi, how are you? What brought you in today? And I think that there's some things that there are some soft skills that happen all through our lives that really do pull. And I think again, that's my last piece of advice is that as long as you know where you're going, those pieces will fall and you will get there. It's when we stop following that kind of piece of us that says it's not happening. And I've had this happen, by the way, with licensing. I seem to have it happen every 3 years where it's like, it's not happening fast enough. It's all trash. And it's not. You just got to like regroup and it's going to come. But yeah, it's like, and it's one of the things that I know because I started late. I did not just like come out and got to do it. I have collected stories of women who have started companies, started doing something later in life, because I think it's so important for my reminders to say, if you're not there yet, it's okay. And that you can pick it up today, you can pick it up tomorrow. And how about this? If you're busy and you're growing another aspect of your business and you have something on your heart, there's time for that too. And you don't have to have it happen tomorrow. So that would be my last piece is that there's so much time and there's so many avenues for art, and to let them happen as they are intended is a really big piece in having
this is so it is so powerful. So I always ask during the podcast, because I feel like every one of us needs to have a word that guides us through at that season. It might be a quote. It might be, what is that one word that guides you through?
I think it shifts for us as we kind of go. And I always think of like the quotes as being something that's like inspirational or aspirational. But I have one that actually I found very, very recently that kind of called me out. And so I'm going to share this with you and your listeners because I think it's something that kind of kicked my butt a little bit. And previous Nicole at some point saved this to my desktop. I should just preface with this. I don't know where it came from. I've Googled it. I can't even figure out who said it, but this is the quote. But whatever you think you can't do, just know that there is someone who is confidently doing it wrong right now. They have no plans at doing it better, and people are paying them to do it. Please believe in your own excellence as much as they believe in their mediocrity. And that one really, kind of mic drop. And, and I think the interesting thing about that, and I will tell you specifically what happened with me, and I have this still on my desktop because I feel like I need to read this a lot, because I think this goes back to the idea of like artists getting in their own way, creatives getting in their own way, people just getting in their own way, is we kind of determine what we are qualified to do and not a lot. And, and it's something, like I said, that whole imposter syndrome thing.
Yes.
It's funny. We actually, I don't know if you caught, we had a conversation about that. And I felt like I deal with imposter syndrome all the time. I don't know if other people, because I seem to be a minority in that. I think we do. I think, so like some people are better at playing that off, but if we're having real talk, I do every day, kind of, I'm worried it'll all go away. And it's just, like I do have those things. And I do think there's also things that, and if you think a little bit, you'll probably have a person or something that's on your radar, that is on your radar, not because you admire it. It's probably on your radar because it kind of bugs you. And those are those little things that are the pit of your stomach that are there to say you're jealous because you're not doing it. And you really it's kind of like, I don't think it's my best quality, but it is there. I think that we look at what other people do and are a little bit annoyed that they're doing, but it really comes back to the lens of I'm just too scared to do it, or I haven't started down that road. So that quote kind of like, there are people doing things that you either can do as well or in your own way. And the person that decided that is you. And so it goes back to like getting things out, putting things out before they're ready. I don't think it's something I do well by any means. I think it's a lot of things that most creative people would tell you that they struggle with is when do we feel validated enough to do something?
Yes.
So that's my quote. Like, honestly, right now,
I love it.
It caused me to do something I had been putting off, and I did it imperfect.
I love it.
But it kind of kicked my butt enough to be like, just get it up. Like, just get it up. For me, that ended up like putting something on my website that I had been avoiding for years, right? Like,
wow.
But I did it. And then you know what? Something came from it.
That's amazing.
Right? Like that's what it is. So like I said, I wish I had learned this lesson and now I'm just going to do that for now. No, I have to look at it all the time. And I think that that's at the moment sort of something that I'm really keeping front and center.
Well, Nicole, I hate to end this time, but it's been amazing. So how can people find you and see your gorgeous art and connect with you?
Sure.
How do they find you?
So one is my website, which is NicoleTamarin.com. I'm on Instagram from time to time, but shockingly to me, the place I am the most has been Clubhouse this year, and having those same conversations that were kind of the inspiration point for me getting started, specifically about our licensing. We do that every Thursday. But look me up on Clubhouse.
That's amazing.
Either way, Nicole Tamarin is probably the easiest way, just to the home base.
That's right. Well, thank you again. You are such a joy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're ready now. Jump. The sky's the limit. Jump. Leave it all behind and jump. Just go for it. Jump. If you can